Minister Andonovsky, you laid out the background for this panel very well, so you actually made my job easier. Thank you so much. Good morning, or yo regelt. Thank you for joining us for this panel, titled From Tech Utopia to Tech Polarity, the Race to Own the Century. As established technology leaders, as well as emerging digital powers, move to secure a strategic advantage, the global tech landscape has entered an era of both sharper contestation and fragmentation. This panel will examine how governments, the private sector, and other players in this ecosystem are navigating this sea change, and what concrete choices they face in balancing growth, innovation, multilateralism, and tech sovereignty. We'll be focusing today on whether today's geopolitical pressures inevitably constrain collaboration, or whether new models of cooperation can emerge, even in this more competitive world. We're joined by a panel that will solve this problem for us once and for all. Already introduced, so we'll get straight to the discussion because we are a little shorter on time than we were initially. So I'll start with an opening question for all of you. Smaller states or middle powers often have to choose between quote-unquote off-the-shelf or ready-made technology and national sovereignty. How do you see this affecting nations' ability to govern itself? We'll start with Minister Andonovsky and move down the line.
Yes, thank you very much. This choice that you mentioned is often posed as binary choice, so either or. In reality, the issue is not whether a country buys technology, it is whether you can understand, control, and strategically position it in the way that you feel that it's comfortable for your citizens, for your institutions, and for your systems. Because when the state becomes reliant on a single external provider for cloud infrastructure, AI, identity systems, or models, or telecommunications backbone, then it becomes vulnerable in terms that is gradually losing negotiating leverage. This predominantly not with countries, other countries, but predominantly with international tech giants. In this regard, strategically positioning yourself would mean that you build or you buy off-the-shelf technology for some systems, and then you strategically position yourself towards it. That doesn't mean that, and it's not suitable to say that any country in the world that is medium or small-sized, as my country is, can allow itself to build everything domestically or live in an autarky that is close to the international system. But to strategically plan what you actually have. I have chosen a bit of a hybrid path in my country. If you see, for example, our cloud architecture is built in such a way that it's triple hybrid, which means that some of our systems are based in the country with private vendors or domestic public institutions. Part of it is in Europe, and other part is built in the United States. So it means that we're building it in a triple sense of a system. That helps us being flexible in the same time that we are building a resilient system. I unfortunately inherited a system that was very ad hoc. We're built in diverse silos. Building it back means building it in a systemic manner. How to do it, but by not being dependent on one sole source. I would say that will be the short answer to your question.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this interesting dialogue, and also for being, I think, one of the, not only an Argentine voice, but also one Latin American voice here at the discussion, so which was quite important when you look what was discussion previously. So my point of the off-the-shelf and national sovereignty is that we are forced not to choose sides, to choose ecosystems. That is going to be my first point on that issue. And when you look at polarity, you see an intertwined race, which is the race for breakthrough, which is the Utopia part, the race about infinite possibilities. And the second race is the race for natural resources and choke points. And that is the problem of the polarities, is the race for finite resources. But when you look at the ecosystems, the important part for me is that we need to accept that at some point dependence is unavoidable. For Argentina, for Hungary, dependence is unavoidable. But as the minister stated correctly, in my point of view, that autonomy is not longer independency, it's how we will manage dependence. And that needs us to be smarter and to use exactly the same policy choices that you propose, and we in a further part of the world like Argentina, we usually did and does. The other important thing that we live in a context of interdependence, the weaponized interdependence. So when we look at the tech polarity, the first race, which is the race for breakthrough, rewards tempo, as it was previously stated. So buying mature system and plugging into dominant ecosystem can compress, in our case, research and development cycles, shorten kill change, and accelerate adaptation. But the key question is what is going to happen with the second race, which is the race for resources, infrastructure and choke points. And that's the problem, that when integrations turns into vulnerability. Suppliers can weaponize access and denial through licensing, export control, spare parts, and other ways. And use this idea of panopticon layer of network system to expand visibility and leverage. So they can use the connectivity in their favor against us. So in our way, the solution for middle countries like Argentina is as I said, manage dependence and nationally build fail-safe that allow us to keep to prevent the single switch pressure and to avoid abuse in the suppliers chain.
Great, thank you. And first of all, thank you for the invitation. I'm also very happy to be here and also share my perspective among these distinguished speakers, actually, and our moderator. So, yeah, I'm actually Public Affairs Director at VNO Group. I lived quite many years in Brussels, over 10 years, 11 to be precise. Now I'm based in Athens, Greece. I used to work also for some tech companies, including Meta, Huawei, but also was advising the European Commission for quite some years. So I believe that I, in a way, represent the industry perspective, and let's say I have also a global vision of how the Europe thinks in a way, but also other tech companies coming from either US or China. At the same time, I'm not representing these companies today. I'm representing mainly my perspective and as an expert on these fields, but also, the company I'm currently working. So on this particular question, I don't think that the real choice is between using ready-made technology and losing sovereignty. The real issue is whether countries keep choice and control, as also Mr. Antonovsky said, and or whether they become dependent on systems they can't actually influence. So ready-made technology is often the right option, and it can be faster, cheaper, and sometimes safer than building everything from scratch. And Europe benefits a lot from global technology like cloud services, as you mentioned, cybersecurity tools, and AI. Because basically, it helps governments and businesses grow services, upgrade infrastructure, and at the same time innovate. Which innovation, I think, it's very important after all. So the problem starts when use turns into lock-in, and it's something also that the other co-panelists actually shared previously. So if a government can't fully understand how a system works, can't check it properly, can't set clear requirements, or can't switch providers without big cost or disruption, it's then when I believe decisions can start being driven by what system allows, not by what elected leaders decide. And that's when sovereignty is tested, I would say. So the goal shouldn't be nationality versus technology. The objectives should be resilience and options. In practice, that means that we need clear rules and smart procurement processes. It means, so the governments basically avoid lock-in, as you described previously, systems that work well together through common standards, strong transparency and security for important services, and also a real ability to change provider when needed. So governments, I believe, should have this choice when they decide to change provider, to be able and have the capacity to do so. And from a European perspective, and again, this comes also from my experience in Brussels, strategic autonomy doesn't mean building everything alone or shutting others out. It means basically having the capacity to ensure trusted and secure choices, while at the same time staying open to innovation, partnerships, and global cooperation. Interoperability is also very important, but it's something that I would like to raise also as the discussion flows. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers, Hungarian Institute of International Affairs and RF, for the very kind invitation. It's a very important dialogue. And I come from a country in Southeast Asia, Singapore, which is a small state, as well as one of the most digitalized states in Asia, in particular in Southeast Asia. Now, the questions that the kind moderator has put up is very, very relevant to where I come from, my region. I believe that when it comes to a nation's ability to govern itself amid tech governance, there are probably 4 important areas that every nation may want to address. I think firstly is about bargaining power. Now, it's a fact that technology is not about only its functions, but where a country features in the global digital domain, in the geopolitical dynamics of the digital space itself. So I feel that a nation should strive to make itself an important node of the technological ecosystem. Why so? If you are an important node of the technological system, I think you will have greater bargaining power to influence or to persuade tech companies on how to develop and how to deploy technology, that will, in a way that will meet your national interests, your sovereign interests, as well. If you are a very useful node to the tech ecosystem, then I feel the problem or the risk of facing coercion from tech companies or from larger powers would be better managed. The second thing is actually on resilience, which I think some of my fellow panelists have mentioned. I feel that resilience is it's not about choosing side in the technological competition. It's about adopting a strategy of flexible partnerships, where you have options, and in order to prevent an over-dependence on any particular technology supplier or from any particular country which supplies this technology. This is the idea that is necessary in order to manage any risk if disruptions does happen, especially when there's conflict or the technological competition between the major powers become escalated. The third thing I think is on tech governance. Countries embrace technology, but the standards, the norms are set by the bigger powers or by the tech companies. But are all these standards or norms, are they actually aligned with our national interests, with our sovereign interests? So nations should develop the capability to set their own norms and principles on tech development. Make it useful by selling the ideas to even other countries, probably other middle powers. So when you come together as a substantive market size, you probably have greater influence in terms of tech governance. And the last point I want to raise is about the defense of the digital domain. While we may rely on external suppliers for our technologies, I think that nations should also develop its own domestic capabilities and talent in terms of detecting threats in your digital systems, having your own tools to also detect or independently assess some of these systems, whether there are certain vulnerabilities, and take the necessary actions to basically minimize the risk.
Thank you. We've had a range of perspectives on this question now. There was the point of being flexible and resilient, also concerns about surveillance, if I'm hearing that right, but then also an emphasis on choice and safety above all, and then what systems can technically allow in terms of what governments want out of them. So we'll dive into each of these aspects separately, of course. But I'm going to ask a question to Minister Andonovski again. You, in your remarks, talked about building bridges, not bunkers. Great phrase. And my question to you then is, can we apply conflict resolution frameworks to this tech race? And then is this winner takes all sentiment right now too aggressive for mediation?
For me, it's not a surprise that the best authors in conflict management in the past couple of years are writing extensively on how tech influences peace studies or how tech is included in the negotiations of the new age. Just see Christine Bell, for example. There is this landmark text of hers that's called titling practically what is called peace tech. And she analyzes how in the new trends, technology defines or shapes narratives in terms of conflict mediation. There is a mentality of at least winner takes most, if not all, in this realm. And there is an effect on the networks, on the platform's concentration, and on frontiers that can compute and create strong incentives for domination. And if you see the tech giants in the world, they strive for domination in the realm in order to guide countries towards, for their profit, for sure, but also for their influence. And also, I think that the downside risks are shared. I think we have to focus on specific conflict prevention tools, similar to crisis stability measures. I talked about a bit in the speech about restraint, and I think the rules of restraint around, especially around critical civil infrastructure, have to be set among ourselves as countries, but also among these tech companies, because attacks on hospitals, on energy grids, water, or core financial systems easily translate into real-life escalation of violence, escalation of conflict. And if in the past we would think about Geneva Conventions and how countries or terrorists would not attack or would try to circumvent key critical infrastructure like hospitals or like energy grids, today we see attacks on the energy grids that are daily, that are done through cyber attacks but have the similar or the same effects. And I think in this realm, confidence building measures are key. And I mentioned a bit about strategic partnerships. What we've built as country with Hungary is a prime example of how strategic partnerships can work in the economic field, but also in the digital affairs field. The same I'm thinking about the United States. It's this approach that you build confidence measures within those partnerships, because I believe that the world will not be dominated by international organizations, will not be dominated by international liberal peace. We've seen that it's scattered, and it's with the conflicts that are constantly going on, even in Europe, we've seen that this world order did not fulfill its own promise. What the future holds is, I think, strategic partnerships that are built bilaterally, regionally, and building this partnership will be probably the key to conflict management.
So you're saying there's a shift towards trusted partnerships.
And building up. Maybe you start small, you start with small steps, but building up those partnerships in this digital domain and in the cyber is a key to functioning. Information sharing platforms, step by step, trusting each other and building it up.
Mm-hmm. Which actually brings me to a question I had for Angeliki, which is, in your day-to-day, is the fragmentation of the internet still a theoretical risk, or are you seeing it manifest in your work?
It's a very interesting question. I think it's not just theoretical. I think it's something that companies, especially experience into day-to-day, actually working across and also across borders. So in practice, you constantly navigate different rules on things like data transfers, localization, content moderation, something that we also heard yesterday. Platform responsibilities, different requirements around cybersecurity and AI. So we see, even when the underlying technology is global, the way actually that you can run a service, what data you can use, where you can store it, what you must disclose, how you handle takedowns, how you assess basically AI risks, and which is quite mainstream nowadays, can differ significantly actually from one jurisdiction to another. So the internet isn't it, let's say, fully split in a way that, let's say, into separate networks, but it has become much more region-specific in how services operate. So for companies, that means higher compliance cost, more operational complexity, and sometimes having to redesign products or processes for specific markets because of this complexity and because there is no, let's say, harmonization on all these kind of processes and rules. So for governments, it reflects legitimate priorities like privacy that you mentioned, safety, security, or cultural norms. So fragmentation isn't automatically a bad thing. The real danger isn't that the rules are different, actually. The real danger is when they become incompatible, I would say. When requirements can't be met at the same time, or when systems can't connect smoothly across borders. So again, interoperability is key here. And that's when you get real barriers to innovation, trade, and even cooperation on security, which is really fundamental for technologies like AI, for example. So the goal shouldn't be to eliminate differences, but to prevent incompatibility, I would say, by building interoperability, as I mentioned before, and we need also shared technical standards and trusted ways to work cross borders and with different jurisdictions. So this would be my 2 cents on this.
And with how things are right now, do you see that interoperability happening?
Not really, I'm afraid. So, because as I said, there are like different countries have different rules. So we need to find a way through perhaps global cooperation, dialogue to solve actually these challenges and make systems more compatible, as I said, and more interoperable. So.
All right. Secretary Bartolome. Going off of the way that you framed your opening remarks, how do countries like Argentina avoid becoming digital vassals to the United States or China? Can sovereignty exist without total tech independence?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because yes, sovereignty exists. But in our case, we started to think that every single great power or major tech power has the possibility to spy on us, to know what we are doing, because our systems are connected to them. They have the human capability and capacities to see what we are doing. So in a way, we try to solve it, deciding who we are going to allow to spy on us in a way, and to establish the way that we are going to share data, and to know in the 90% of the situation what type of data we are sharing with them. So in a way, the trust is the solution for us. And we decided to do one thing. We are not following hedging politics, which is a grand strategy way of dealing with China and United States. We are more following this idea of selective engagement. For us, it's important because it allows us to be clear on China to the United States in which areas we are going to move forward, specifically, for example, in commercial telecommunication, we are allowed to work with the Chinese and Chinese equipment, Chinese software, whatever, but in the defense domains, even if that creates some noise because we have some difference, we still have difference with the United Kingdom. We decided to work closely with the United States, closely with Europe, and assume their standards as our standards. So we improve our cybersecurity capabilities. We find new partners in AI technology with the Western world, specifically in the defense domain. But we are open to other domains in other areas. But to do that, we need to be unambiguous in our policy. And our policy is towards the Western world. And another important issue that you bring in the conversation is space domain. For example, the previous administration worked quite closely with China in order to give us a strategic access to specific areas of our countries, of my country, that brings them a better position to look into the space and to look into tracking Western satellites. Now we decided to stop that type of agreement with China and to move closely to the United States. So in a way, selective engagement is our answer to the question that you pose. We are not going to be vassal of anyone. We are deciding in which area we are going to work specifically with each country.
Thank you. I like that phrase, selective engagement rather than hedging. Faisal, a question to you. You've done some research, for example, on influence operations and disinformation. Is the polarization you see, especially on tech platforms, making societies, and this is also a question of resilience and sovereignty, more fragile to external influence? And can we regulate our way out of it?
Thank you for the question. I think there are some key terms in that question where if we have more time, we could actually unpack more. For example, what do we mean fragility of society? What does it entail? What do we mean by polarization of technological platforms? I think when it comes to polarization of technological platforms, there can be at least two issues. First is the fact that there's just talking about, there's many kind of platforms, but if we take a look at social media itself, there's the Western platforms, primarily American, then there's also the Chinese platforms. They operate on two different ecosystems, and that's already a kind of technological polarization. But even within the Western platform, which is very much well used in my part of the world, there's also polarization within the Western platforms, where there's different views on different issues, be it political issues, social political issues relating to domestic politics or domestic policies, relating to strategic security issues regarding the foreign policy and defense policy of the country. So when we take a look at how, firstly, we have Western apps, social media, Chinese social media, the conversations on each of them can be quite different. Now, if you come from a country or from a region like mine, where both Western and Chinese social media apps are very popular, and when we have a particular controversial or a very sensitive issue happening in the region, for example, the South China Sea, and how countries in Southeast Asia respond to it, the conversations on the Chinese apps and the conversations on the Western apps can be quite different. And when that happens in one country, that already creates a certain space for a kind of fragility in the society which can be exploited for external influence or external interference. But even within a particular app itself, say the Western app like Facebook or Meta, right? It's already quite polarized, different kinds of views. There's already space for external interference to come in, if need be. Because at the end of the day, one thing which we notice is that even in the area of defense and foreign policy, they are not just external looking, they're also quite domestic. And how people converse on these issues, how they are divided, translates into how they vote. And that actually affects how policies are developed. It's kind of external interference. But then again, there's also this issue of what external interference is. Do we have evidence that certain narratives that appear to be adversarial, are they really the work of some external state actor? Or is it the work of tech giants who kind of align with a certain state actor? Or is it just organic conversations? So regulation, I think, is definitely happening. It is one of the knee-jerk reaction from my part of the world. But whether it works or not, I think it is still open to debate. But it's happening. But I believe that beyond that, regulation is not the silver bullet to address external interference. It's about nations understanding what identity or what values are very important to its nationhood. And whether the influence or the narratives coming from abroad actually challenges this national identity to the extent that it actually endangers our sovereignty or our national cohesion. So this external difference, I feel, is definitely something which is very relevant and crucial today, but it has to be handled in a certain way that does not actually suppress good discussion or relevant discussion about a topic, because people have different views, different opinions, and they should also be listened to.
If I may, just a comment on regulation. I believe that regulation should focus on, should follow always a risk-based approach rather than on the technology, regulate the technology actually itself. It needs to be proportionate, needs to ensure legal certainty for companies, especially for small and medium enterprises that do not really have the right resources in place for compliance costs. And focus on innovation, because over-regulation often hinders innovation and can have actually the opposite results to things like, sovereignty or strategic autonomy. This is my 2 cents.
And let's dive into that, because we have been talking about trust and values more in an abstract level. Maybe we can narrow down to a specific technology, artificial intelligence. That's all the trend right now. That's what most countries are talking about. Is it possible, as you see the world right now, to have a global set of AI ethics or regulations or frameworks? Or are we doomed perhaps to a Western AI versus Eastern AI ecosystem?
I think we see shared principles on AI. What we don't see is common rules between West and East, I would say. There is already broad agreement on ideas like human oversight, safety, accountability. What differs is how countries implement, actually, these principles and how they manage the trade-offs. So rather than a divide between, as you rightly described, between Western and Eastern AI, we're likely to see different governance approaches built on common norms. So the real danger is losing dialogue between them, I would say. So we need better, let's say, alignment between the two, because the principles, the shared principles are there. It's just the way we apply these principles that differ.
Interesting. Secretary Patalem, I saw you shaking your head. Do you have an opinion on this?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that, but I think that the question is who is controlling tempo as a power. And let me go back to the early 2000s. Ray Kurzweil wrote a book called The Singularity is Near in 2005, I think. We didn't get yet to the singularity era. We are not living in a singularity era, but we are living in the singularity process. Every single component of the singularity are now feeling it. So, because regulation affects time, and time is the key question for the second half of the 21st century, we are not going to find a common ground on regulation. And if I may, because we are talking about tech polarity and this issue of regulation, for example, there's a good movie where the Western society decided to move out from the artificial intelligence, and the Asia societies decided to create a safe haven for the artificial intelligence and work together with the humans' artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, I don't remember the name of the movie. But the key question is that as soon as that happened, the Western world started a war against the East Asia protecting artificial intelligence. So it is quite difficult because real advantages are there, and as I told, the competence that we live on prevents that to happen.
Minister Andonovsky, do you, continuing this line of questioning, do you see this current tech race as a new Cold War? Or is the complexity of digital independence, as you laid out in your remarks, mean that we're creating something very different?
For sure, there is a sense of arms race logic around this. Everything that was discussed, I really like the answers to the last questions. When you see about space, AI, quantum, for sure you will see that there is a tendency to strategically compete with one another. There are two key differences, I would say, to that logic of the Cold War era. First one is interdependencies, or a sort of interoperability that is not always thought out, maybe is not planned, but it's occurring. When you compare how arms were developed in the Cold War era, you have blocks. So one block develops its own arms and struggles or competes with another block. Today you have the whole world in one phone, in one smartphone, one tablet, because you have TikTok, in the same time you have Meta. Data flows. Countries use the same cloud providers, and there you cannot put a border on the competition. Hardware as well. One country decides that they want to have 5G equipment that is produced in China. Another one, like my country, forbids it. So there is not you cannot block them out. And the second aspect, which I think is very important, is the role of international companies, especially these tech giants. If you see the situation of the relationship between Microsoft, OpenAI, Meta, look at the conflicts that happen in France between the French government and these companies, or the Swedish government and these companies. So this is internal Western, let's say, competition. I wouldn't say that they're fighting only with Chinese companies. They're fighting internally in their, let's say, value-based systems with these companies, and the role of these companies is also very interesting. If you, for example, one thing that the European Union pushes on us as a country is the Digital Services Act. And when I say what can a country of 1.8 million do in competition with Meta, or in competition with, you know, these huge online content platforms, how we can put challenges to them or obstacles to them, how we can forbid them to put out advertisements in our country, it is a quick key question. For us, as a small country, it will remain what I would call a smart adaptability. That will mean that you put focus as a sovereign on some of the key aspects that you can control, government certs, security operations centers, platforms for information sharing. I believe those ones should be sovereign to the furthest possible extent, and then you have to give out some space to everything else that is going on. That's why you will never see me put out a regulation forbidding Facebook ads in my country, because that will block out the whole of the country that can go on these platforms. What would a Meta do if I did this? They would say, okay, no Facebook for Macedonia. And that is, for them, 1.6 million people is nothing. For us, it would be stopping media freedom in an area that is, we've said that will be open to the public and will be transparent. So I think it's a fine balance, and you have to balance it out every single decision that you make, because it's always something that is tricky and that is out there.
Just a quick comment on that. We are evaluating and underestimating the role of corporative and state-to-state espionage. When you look, the Chinese drone program is exactly a copy of the American drone programs. The Chinese were quite smart in order to reduce the technological gap using espionage, but not only using espionage, using American universities as a way to collect information in order to go back to China and develop their own military capabilities, technological military capabilities. So we need to start to look deeply on covert operation, for example, on key industries on defense.
On the note of policy recommendations, I suppose, we have a little under 6 minutes left, so a lightning round to all of you. And I'd like for you all to propose like concrete recommendations as we close this panel. If we are to preserve this interconnectedness that many of our countries have benefited from, the interconnectedness of innovation, while respecting national sovereignty, what is one agreement or policy, either the national level, regional level, globally, that you'd like to see signed in the next 5 years, let's say, starting with Faisal down the line?
Right. From my point of view, I want to bring back the idea of cyber norms, right? And one of the 11 cyber norms in the United Nations is that a country must make sure that all information and communication technology in that country should not be used to create a harmful impact on another country. I think that should be adapted for the use of AI, because I think AI has been used to actually accelerate or making certain harmful cyber activities more dangerous. In the case, for example, in my region, we have a problem with cyber fraud, which goes around, which actually spreads across the world. AI is being used to make cyber fraud more agile. And when that becomes a problem, a regional problem, an international problem, then you have the Americans coming in, you have the Chinese coming in, then you even have regional powers like Thailand trying to use military means to put a stop to it. So I think this is the use of AI, the policy, be it national or regional, on the curbing the use of AI for harmful means is something which I think we should be looking to for the next few years.
Singapore, I believe, has passed a few regulatory frameworks to regulate these harms. Is there something you'd like to see signed?
Something like that. The idea is that in Singapore, because we see ourselves as leading in terms of digitalization, so we hope for such AI norms to be somewhat adapted or embraced by our neighbors. But that also depends on whether the countries in the region have the maturity or the capacity to adapt similar principles. Sometimes it may take a longer time for them to do that.
Got it. Angeliki.
So if I had to put the one priority in the next 5 years, will be actually interoperability frameworks backed up by actually practical standards. And I think this requires, of course, a collaboration between governments, industry, in the private sector, obviously, and standardization bodies. Because at the end, fragmentation isn't avoided by everyone doing the same thing, but by making sure systems can work together, and interoperability there is key.
For us, it's going to be choosing the right partners and keep building the fail-safe in order to have good friends, but in a way that we can manage what we wanted to do.
Domestically speaking, it would be, I think, a boring comment that I will make, and that is consolidation of critical civil digital infrastructure. We've inherited systems that are not speaking to each other, even domestically are not interoperable. Also consolidation in data centers, and consolidation of what that hardware and software looks like in the next 5 years, because otherwise we're spending resources that we don't have. So we're not a rich country with abundant resources, especially in this domain, so we have to be mindful of how we move strategically forward, and that could only be done if we have a consolidated domestic infrastructure. Internationally, it might sound a bit utopian, but I think we have to internationally agree what cyber war crimes are, and define that some domains are out of touch. Hospitals, energy grids, water supply systems, democracy, democratic regimes that are elected. What is the basis that we internationally in cyber domain cannot touch? Because purposefully now countries are thinking about not about cyber defense, but about cyber offense. What does it happen when these big and important countries and powerful countries decide to go on the offensive? Now we are only defending ourselves. What will the world look like when, I don't know, the US decides to attack someone in the cyber domain? And where do we set the boundaries for that? What is out of touch is something that we should talk about and see if it can be, I don't think it can be regulated, but at least we should try to have a Geneva Convention agreement on what is out of touch in the cyber domain.
Thank you. Moonshot, but we can remain hopeful. The term tech utopia is in the panel title. Thank you so much. We covered quite a range of issues: space, influence ops, AI, and so thank you for keeping us on time as well. And thank you for joining us. We'll be heading into lunch now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the first half of our day. We now invite you to continue the conversation over lunch, which will be served downstairs in the hotel's restaurant. Our staff will be able to guide you there. Just make sure that you take all of your belongings. Our program continues at 1:45 with our next keynote address by Maka Bocsarishvili, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. As we say in Hungarian, jó étvágyat, enjoy your meal.